your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about something that constantly ping-pongs around the internet, even right-wing commentators and certainly left-wing commentators and all those in between regularly bring up the point that women today, young women, and even into middle age, women are much better educated than men today. Women have higher education and education. Oh, now, is this true? Is this accurate? What do we mean by better education? Women are better educated. What are the definitions that we're applying here? Because definitions of anything these days are certainly fluid in this language of social equity and equal outcomes and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and so on. So we need to just have a look at this. I would assert that women are not better educated than men, but I would agree that more women than men attend college and university. So there's no doubt about that. I would also agree that more young women than men graduate to senior high school. And then go on to university. So I don't think there's any question about that. But what are we talking about in terms of education? Education's always been, from the communist era, like Marx and Trotsky and Lenin and even Stalin, for goodness sakes, were big on throwing around this education. But what they mean by education and what you and I might mean by education are different things. So I'm going to, and I've done other videos on this before, but I'm old enough now, in my 60s, I'm old enough now to sort of remember what the education system was like before affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion, and allowances and so on being made for so-called minorities. And the test applied back in the day and still today was, are all outcomes equal? An equal number of boys and girls graduating high school, are equal number of boys and girls going to university, an equal number of boys and girls getting diplomas and degrees and masters and PhDs, and minorities. So now, this only applied in really all white countries or communist countries. They were the only two areas where this sort of concern seemed to exist. Well, they don't give a rat's ass about it in Pakistan or Africa or something. But so were the outcomes equal? Well, no, they weren't. And going back to high school, early high school, was that they would often, I think it was pretty much all, they would often read out the top 10 kids, students, who in each subject. So it would be, Billy Bob, Jimmy Jack, and so on and so forth. They'd read out the names, let's say at the school assembly. There's a bit of a buzz, there was 1,000 plus 1,200 or whatever kids in the high school, and the principal or whoever would get up and say, in mathematics it was Jimmy Jack, and in I don't know, English it was Billy Bob, and so on. So they read out all the names there in the top 10, and they would give out prizes. Now all the prizes went to boys. There were a few subjects. I think it was called home science, and it was cooking. It was effectively cooking. Not that it wasn't intricate in its way. This is how you combine garlic and onions with these seasonings to produce this and that. And those were the days when, remember, a factory worker's wage could support a dependent wife and 2.4 children. You could buy a house and have a car. So that was the purchasing power of the wage back then. And so girls would come first in there were no boys ever did those courses. So girls would come first in those. Now all the boys and girls sports was separated, so girls would come first in the girls' sports and boys. So there'd be prizes awarded there. And I never thought about it. There was a dancing thing in this high school, and the girls, I think, won the prize for dancing. But I never even thought twice about that. But boys came first in every academic subject. and the top 10 in every subject were boys. If a girl made it into the top 10, there was a universal intake of breath. But in those days, it was a strictly pass or fail merit exam. You passed or you failed, that was it. There was no allowances for being, a black lesbian or something like that. It was all strictly pass or fail. Now, the argument back in the day was that, well, the reason for that isn't because boys are brighter or they work harder or they take a responsibility or this or that. The reason for that, those outcomes where boys are coming first in everything or even in the top 10. And so I remember in some subjects, like the girl that came the highest, like in a form of, say, 200 kids, even if a girl came in the top 40, it was considered an achievement, out of 120 kids. That's what it was like back in the day of strictly pass or fail exams. But the claim was that, well, the girls aren't being encouraged enough. If they were encouraged, then they would do better. Now, maybe that was true. And so how do you encourage them? Well, what we'll do is we'll just give girls first place in everything, and then that'll encourage them and other girls. So they resorted straight away, not that I understood it at the time, but they straight away went to this idea with social engineering as the answer. Is it encouraging? Is it keeping that same meritorious standard of strictly pass or fail? But we'll do after school coaching classes for girls, for example. Why don't we put all the time and energy into making girls do better in a meritorious system? Shouldn't we do that? Or minorities, black lesbians or whatever. It doesn't matter. And I'd be all in favour of that. Have after school classes, paid for by the taxpayer. Have after school classes, and the girls who want to put more effort and time into it can do that. Now, I remember also quite clearly when it came to handing in assignments, school assignments, and essays, things like that. The girls were always the most unreliable. It was just universal across the board. Girls were always the most unreliable in doing this. They would not hand it in on time. They would not hand it in at all, or they would hand in something so half-assed that you wouldn't. Now, not all girls, some did, but the dramas were, I couldn't hand it in. Oh no, the dog ate my homework, and as they got a bit older, oh my sister's having boyfriend trouble, so I didn't have time to do the assignment. And any distraction of any description was enough to say, no, I couldn't do it because of this and that. And that's something I noticed that women, even into their 20s and mid-20s, would try on as I became a manager in the corporation and so on. So this was a universal thing. Now, my view as a school student, high school student, was that if you don't put the work in, you're not going to get a good pass. Now, being a fairly conscientious student, I had no problem sort of hitting the books and studying and reading and which is what doing well at school is all about. I was never really a brilliant student, but like anything, I learned that if you work hard enough at it and apply yourself diligently, even if you have little or no natural talent, then you can still do all right. You won't be winning the Ducks of the school or winning the universal prize for this. You won't be that, but you'll do well enough. You'll do pretty good. My sort of results, graduating were pretty decent. I didn't do well enough to get into medicine or law, which were at the apex of the entry level results you had to get, but did well enough to get into pretty much everything else. But did I come near the top or at the top, in the overall mark? No. I won some high school prizes in subjects like I won the history prize and something else. So again, I did all right, but only because I worked hard at it. I didn't have some natural talent there. Now there were kids that had that. There's some kids that had like photographic memories. There were, you could say something to a kid like, in 1 week, and then a week later they could recite almost word for word what you'd said. And I thought, wow, I don't have a memory that good. So there were talented kids in the sense that there were kids that would grasp complicated mathematical stuff, calculus. They could look at a calculus problem, mathematics calculus. They could look at a calculus thing, and in their head they could look at, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. The answer is such and such. And I thought, wow, I can't do that. So they were bright kids, but all the bright kids I knew were boys. There was a quite a bright, diligent student, a particularly unattractive girl who turned out, not surprisingly, by the way, to be a lesbian. But she was as diligent as I would think, as conscientious as any other student. She did fairly well. But that sense of hard work and hitting the books was something very few girls did, but a lot of boys did. Now, some of this was boys being told, you're going to take the responsibility for a dependent family, so you need to do well at school so you can get a good job to provide a good quality of life from your family. If you're responsible, you have to take that responsibility. It's a heavy load. It's for you to carry. And so there was that, whereas girls didn't have that instilled in them, not in that same way. And then I remember, the adult women around me when I was a kid telling me, that was my lot in life. My lot in life was the purpose of my existence was to get a job, make money, and bring it home to the family, to procreate, to make my wife proud, and this sort of stuff. And that was whereas girls didn't have that. So the motivation to self-sacrifice was very much placed on men, particularly in the sort of the mobile, upwardly mobile areas of society. You can improve, you can get a good job, you need to work hard and do well, and so on. Some girls weren't pushed to that. But as high school wore on, the teachers' unions and the radical social engineers started to have a bigger influence on things. And they constantly came back to this equal outcomes. And that was constantly what they came back to. And I remember the teachers' unions carrying on. And so getting equal outcomes by encouraging girls to work harder and study harder and hit the books, and inculcating in them a sense of responsibility to work harder and hit the book. That's going to take too long, and so that we want results today. So what we're going to do is, and this is always a failing of the education, or in any social engineering, they want to rush quickly to results. They want the equal outcomes. They want it now, today. And so they started handing out what were called assessments for attitude in class, and are you trying hard, and this sort of thing. Are you contributing positively to the class? And this became, of course, very subjective. Now, I realized when I was, I think it was fourth year high school, I realized that the school was giving out, in certain, not all subjects, things like English and that sort of stuff, were giving out 100 out of 100 classroom assessments to the girls. So 50% was your exam mark. 50 of 100 was half was the exam mark and half was the assessment. But every girl in subjects like English and so on was getting 50 out of 50. Every girl. And I also noticed that the boys who were the good students, the hard workers, the conscientious, the brilliant, and all that sort of stuff, and they were getting very low assessment marks. So they were artificially weighting the outcome in favour of girls to make sure that girls would come first, and that even the exam that I can't remember the exact numbers here, but say the student who came first in English was a boy, and he got 90% in the exam, say. Now the girl who got the highest mark in the exam only got 60, but so they give a 10 out of 50 mark for the boy who came first, but they give a 50 out of 50 grade in the assessment for the girl. So the girl got ended up coming first when the assessments are combined. But the teachers were gloating at the time. See, look, we managed to artificially stack the deck so a girl came first. So this was the beginning. This was my first exposure to stacking the deck. And then it went on. In senior high school, they actually decided on subjects that girls would come first in. This was predetermined. this, the exam was now irrelevant. They would engineer it so girls would come first in the humanities, if you like, the English and the poetry, that sort of stuff, and boys would still come first in things like mathematics and physics and so on. So there's also an attempt to get boys to do cooking, to equalise that, and so, but they could only achieve these outcomes by stacking the deck. They couldn't achieve it through meritorious means. Now, I have been in favour. It used to gall me that some of these girls, some of whom were bright enough, if they'd applied themselves, would not do their assignments, would not do their work, and were constantly moaning about boyfriends and this and that and so on and so forth, and some of which was I think quite delusional and fictitious. But so I'd have all been in favour of extra effort or extra resources that have been provided or made available to girls that wanted it. But they didn't do that. They just went straight to this stacking the deck and artificial outcome. So that set the architecture up for what we see today. Now, girls used to drop out at high school, in say junior high school. Most of them would flunk the junior high school graduation certificate. In fact, very few of them passed it. Girls, this is. So lots of girls. So the school encouraged girls to leave, saying, "Look, you're not a good student. You flunked the tests, the junior high school graduation test. So why don't you go out and get a job and become a hairdresser or something?" And so off they went. And so very few girls would make it out of junior high school into senior high school. In the more affluent areas, you'd have more girls would stay on. In the less affluent areas, the girls would leave. In a high school in the more downtrodden areas, the senior high school kids were pretty much all boys. There was hardly any girls in them at all. In the more affluent areas, there would be closer to, boys would be say 60-40 or something around that. Girls would be a minority, but not hugely so, whereas it would be say 90-10 in favour of boys in the more depressed areas, and they were doing the more technical subjects such as physics and the like, chemistry and so on. So anyway, the girls were they started stopping or ended the practice of saying to girls that you flunked your junior high school test. They would just gin up the assessments or gin up the grades and the marks so that they would pass, and they would just wave them through. So they're constantly, and that practice has already been constantly lowering the bar. So the girls going to senior high school were no better educated than they had been, but they're now just being waved through. And the girls that would graduate, nearly every girl flunked the senior high school graduation to university certificate. And this was before they had, sociology and peace studies, those sorts of things. That's before they had all that sort of gender studies. They would come in not long afterwards. But so without those courses, the girls would just leave school with a flunked out. They didn't even get the graduation diploma and didn't make it into university. This all changed, and girls were being waved through, but again, solely for the purpose of creating equal outcomes, not for the purpose of providing a quality education or maintaining meritorious standards. So the only casualty in all this was merit. Merit was thrown out the door. And that's the only reason why we see women in university today and the explosion of courses. I mean, there was recently a thing going around the internet that a woman had got a PhD in smells. And the amount of PhDs that are handed out for the most insane sociology type courses so in order to achieve this higher standard of education, more women entering education. Now, education is meant to be that you learn more, you have an inquiring mind, you have the discipline to absorb pertinent and germane information, to assemble that information in useful sort of sequence so you can apply it in your chosen field of endeavour. This is not what education is anymore. Now, I think we all know that for low-grade students, that they're not there for the purpose of learning, they're there for the purpose of indoctrination, all straight white males are Nazis, that sort of stuff. White people invented racism, and the list is endless of the indoctrination that goes on. We're talking very low IQ people. Now, the people that used to be told to just leave high school at age 15, look, you go and get a job. Those people are being brought through into university. So we're talking about a vast swamp of low IQ kids in university, many of whom are women. So I think six out of every 10 are women now. But they're also being given affirmative action degrees, affirmative action masters, and affirmative action PhDs. So the idea they're better educated, that's really, why would any man want to take on a woman who's got a useless degree, who's a moron, thinks she's a genius, and has a debt of a gazillion dollars? You wouldn't want to. So that, I don't think any man would want to take on that, and especially a woman who is so deluded in her sense of superiority that a relationship is nigh impossible. So I don't accept that women are better educated. Have they attended university for longer and doing affirmative action courses such as gender studies and African musical studies? Oh, sure. I don't doubt that that's going on, or you can't dispute it. It is. But is that an education? I would question that. Also, we need to understand how the nature of education has changed. There was I've through my wife, she's got a number of friends who are doing degrees or masters and so on, and they've asked me to can you get your husband Billy Bob to look at this for me and give it the red pen and edit it and that sort of stuff, and to keep in sweet, and I think my wife gets off on the idea that I'm being asked to do this, but so I said, yeah, sure. And the quality of the work I see, and these are people going for masters. Remember, or most recently was a master's, and it was an essay. This was the ultimate essay that was going to land the masters for her. And the woman isn't that bright. I couldn't believe she even got a degree. That she's going for a master's is even. Well, I didn't say anything, but I thought, you're just an affirmative action chick. There is no way. No way that you're here where you are today on any sort of merit. She's got some government job or a Quango job or something, but again, she didn't get on any form of merit. She's nice enough. I quite like her and so on. So anyway, I agreed to give it the red pen and have a look at the quality of the work. Was diabolically bad. I mean, from a factual and cogency point of view, if a third-year high school kid gave it to me, I'd have flunked them. Absolutely flunked them outright. But when I looked at I said, could I see the question that was being asked? So she gave me the actual university questionnaire thing, and it's a multiple choice thing. Not everyone gets the same question, so you can't. I don't know how they can measure students, like who's come first, who gets the prize, who gets the medal, or this or that. I don't know how they do that. Because it's the one subject, but they've got 10 optional questions to answer. And one of those questions, this was, what was it? International political relations or something like that, I think it was called. International political economy, something like that. And so but there was one question in there: how has modern international economics affected the lives of women and marginalized groups? That was one of the questions. What sort of fucking question is that in an exam? That's a bullshit exam. That's a bullshit question. So she who's, again, not very bright, she's not a particularly good student, she chooses that question. And that's a nobody fails question. So she's guaranteed to get her master's. The mere fact they've inserted that question is a staggering and brutal lowering of academic standards, that question even exists in there. The other questions ranged, as I recall, ranged in complexity. Now, we find that the boys doing this would tackle the most complex ones. whereas girls will tackle the easiest ones. And this is the cop-out question. How has this affected the lives of women? There's no right or wrong answer there. So she goes about this, and she just puts in a whole bunch of ideological platitudes and nonsense and absolute absurdities. And I'm looking at this thinking, holy fuck. Again, a third year high school kid, I'd have flunked them. The facts she gets are wrong. The dates are wrong. Like she gets dates wrong by 100 years, not like a few days or a few months or a typo error or something. She gets and so looking through it, it was a diabolical piece of sloppy bad work and half-assed bullshit that she's just thrown together all this hysterical ideological, again, utterances and platitudes and talking points and so on, and just stuck them in an essay. And so I did, just to be nice, I sort of corrected just a few things, saying you may want to look at this, and I think that could do some. So I checked with her later on. Did you correct these? This is where the date was like 120 odd years out or something. Did you correct? Oh no, it doesn't matter. But she didn't even give a shit enough to change these errors that she accepted were errors, and she brushed that off. Oh well, look, as long as I'm sort of the vibe of it all, I'm getting the vibe right. Who cares about the facts? I mean, the facts are just irrelevant. Which is how legal students today are taught. Well, the facts and evidence of a legal case don't really matter anymore. It's more the ideological vibe that's the issue. And see this in I saw that in her attitude to accurate information in the essay. Now, I thought, given the quality of it, even given again that the easy question, I thought there's no way she's going to get past this. It's riddled with just too many errors and too much nonsense and contradictions. She got it, and she even got like a distinction. Not only did she get the masters, but she got one of the higher quality passes you can get. So she's swanning around now with a master's in this subject that she didn't earn. She's at university because of affirmative action. She's doing a master's because of affirmative action. She only answered a nobody fails affirmative action question. So when we look at the education, this supposed education that women have, more women are educated. No, they're not. They're not more educated. They just horribly indulge with affirmative action and DEI nonsense, and with nobody fails type questions and course. Every university course now has a question. How did mathematics affect the lives of women? I was talking to a student a few days ago who dropped out of engineering as a guy, but he got into engineering because his father doesn't speak English as the first language, and even though he didn't really make the grade, they let him go into engineering simply because he's a brown guy with a father that doesn't speak English as the first language. That's apparently dispensation now, so he got in because of that. And he openly admitted, look, I thought I could sort of bullshit my way, but the questions, the exam questions, things like, how does engineering affect the lives of women? He said they wouldn't let me do that because I was straight and I was male. So I got a free pass to enter the course when I shouldn't really have, but they wouldn't let me go and do the easy questions. All the boys had to answer the hard questions. Only the girls could answer the easy questions, as in, how does engineering affect the lives of women or something? So he quit the engineering course and went off and did something else. But it's still, interestingly, it still galled him how the women were given easy questions. Why couldn't the boys have the easy? And I've noticed this when I interview for a job, graduate engineers. I notice how hopeless the women are because they've been given an easy run, these affirmative action type questions. So overall, it does. The idea that women are more educated than men is not true, simply not true. Have they attended university for longer due to affirmative action? Yep, that we can agree, but that does not equate to being better educated, and that's something that we need to come to grips with. Coming to the second tier of this, it's often claimed that because women are so highly educated, they're so clever, that they won't procreate because they've got these wonderful, glittering careers in front of them, and why should they get married? And there's an automatic shortage of men now, because women will only marry up the social scale or the achievement scale, marry up to marry all those Nazis, but they won't marry down the so. That's not true. Do women from upwardly mobile sort of sections of society, do they want to marry it? Well, yes, they do. So that there's no doubt about that. But not everyone's like that. I've known women from wealthy families, and a very unattractive woman from a wealthy family, and she married a labourer who looked like he was one of those Greek gods. He was mentally retarded, so he's got an IQ of 90, and she married him because he looked again like a Greek god, those statues, and Michelangelo carved him or something. And he looked like that, so she married him because she's such an unattractive girl that she was carried away with just, I don't know, the arresting beauty, if you like, of this guy who's working outside all day and he's, fit and bronzed and, all this sort of stuff. So you do see that. So women are prepared to marry down, if I can use that term. But the idea that every woman wants to marry up, it simply isn't true. To do a lot of them, again, the mobile type, class mobile, conscious type people, well, women, sure they do. We were having lunch with some people, and the husband, her woman's husband's been made executive director of something or other, but his title is senior executive director. So I congratulated him on, hey, Billy Bob, congratulations on the executive. And the wife chimed in, quite sort of caustically, it's not executive, it's senior executive director. Okay, excuse me. So there are, those, I don't know, social climbing type women out there. And do they want to marry? Do they want to marry a rich guy? Well, sure they do. Does everyone want to marry a rich guy? Not every woman. I've spoken to some women and they say, well, I don't want to marry a rich guy because it means I'm only a trophy to him, not a real person that he values. And I do understand that sentiment, incidentally. But just coming back to it, does this supposedly educated women not wanting to marry men further down, as they would see it, further down the social scale, that means people aren't marrying, which means they aren't procreating. And this is a major factor contributing to the decline in white birth rates in Western white societies. It may have some effect. I don't think it's a relevant effect. I think these women are unattractive to men. A woman with a bullshit degree is $100,000, $200,000, whatever, in debt. And all she can do is get a part-time job as a barista in, a coffee shop or a cafe or something. Why would any guy who's, say, I don't know, a plumber or an electrician or some mechanic or whatever, who's doing all right, he's working hard, doing overtime, why would he want to take on a relationship with someone who's in that much debt? Because effectively, it's going to be his responsibility to pay off her debt before they can do things like buy houses or have children and that sort of thing. So I think these women have made themselves unattractive. And at the same time, they think, well, I'm highly educated because I got a degree in lesbian dance theory. No, they're not highly educated. What is this? It's bullshit. So our women, better educated men will know. Do they attend university for longer doing bullshit courses and end up delusionally thinking they're better than everyone else? Well, yeah. Is that having a negative effect on society? You bet. You've been with Tassus today. Your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.